You're listening to the Simplify AI podcast, making AI easy to understand, helping you save time and work smarter.
Welcome to Simplify AI. This is the podcast that breaks down the world of artificial intelligence into simple, relatable insights that anyone can understand. We are your hosts. I'm Stephen Bradley.
And I'm Rebecca Bradley.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode. We hope you enjoyed the first one where we were introducing ourselves and how we got into AI. In this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about the history of AI, how long it's been around, where it came from, where we might have seen AI in the past, and what it is now. So let's start with how long AI has been around, because it might surprise people how long artificial intelligence has been around. They may have just think that this is a recent thing.
Yeah, and I think it's quite a dry subject. When you say the history of AI, that probably sounds really dull, but it's actually quite interesting, honestly and truly. If you think about AI, most people at the moment think Chatgpt. There's just that correlation between the two things. That's been around for not long over 2 years, and that's what they're thinking is AI. And that's really what's brought it into the mainstream for a lot of people as well, to even be thinking about AI. But really, you can trace its roots all the way back through technology and all the way back to the Bronze Age and automatons. There is this rich history all the way through, but really the big leaps have been made in the last 70 years. And in the last 2 years, they've been literal quantum leaps. So Chatgpt, people think, oh, that is AI. That is literally it. But even that in itself, there isn't just Chatgpt. Chatgpt is what we call a large language model, which you don't need to really worry about what that means. It's sometimes shortened to LLM, but that will be things like you may have heard of Claude, Gemini, Copilot. Those are all large language models that are trained on massive, huge, gigantic sets of data, which means that they've been able to progress at lightning speed, and they change literally daily in terms of what they can do. You will have seen loads of press releases around, all of these things that it can do, and it's changed massively in the last 2 years. But really, when we're thinking about the big leaps that have been made, that probably has been the last 2 years, but that history is there for thousands of years.
So what might have we have classed AI before? Because the term is used differently now, in terms of the ChatGPTs, like you said, the LLMs, that's what people are saying AI is. What has AI been in the past that we may not have realised?
I think it's around us all the time, and you just don't realise that you're using AI. So sometimes I have conversations with people and I say, oh, you've been using AI for a long time. And they'll say, no, because they're just thinking it's ChatGPT and that's it. But it is in so many products and so many everyday things that you've been using all the time that you wouldn't have realised. Like autocorrect on your phone is artificial intelligence. Traffic prediction, sat-nav apps, customer service chatbots, product recommendations on websites, algorithms in your social media, smart products at home like Ring doorbells, things that are actually attached to the Internet of Things, which is another thing we'll talk about another time. Those products are in loads of thousands of millions of houses, and you're using them all the time and not realising that that's actually AI.
I definitely didn't pick up on that. Like these things have just become integrated into our use of technology, and we've just sort of accepted, oh, that's clever, oh, that's really handy, and not sort of claimed it as artificial intelligence before. And maybe that's just because they're quite contained and simple. Like they only have one thing that they're just trying to do. Sat-nav's just trying to get you to somewhere from A to B as quick as possible. You don't realize all of the actual intelligence behind it, analyzing that data real time, detecting what you're typing as you're typing it and suggesting a correction. Like, we don't see that as being perhaps as intelligent. We just kind of brush it off and go, oh, that's clever. But this is now, like you say, it's been supercharged with the use of LLMs, and now we can sort of see how this technology is going to completely shift from just changing your text messages to getting you somewhere on time, and things like that, that are very basic now compared to where we're at now. So let's talk a little bit more about LLMs, and you've explained that these are trained on massive data. How are we interacting with LLMs now compared to how we would have interacted with AI before in the past?
So I think you touched on something where you're talking about, I mean, I actually hate autocorrect. As my brother, you can testify that it doesn't play ball with me and my typos are terrible. But it's actually incredibly clever, isn't it? That you can type the beginning of a word and it's going to know and be able to predict the rest of those words. And that's got really clever over the last couple of years. Even in itself, it's much better than what it would have been before. But they're very singular use cases where it's only got to concentrate on one thing. And even those examples that we've been given about, sat nav, autocorrect, lots of other things in an LLM, you can use all of those things. It's able to do all of that because it's trained on these massive data sets that allow it to think intelligently. So I think we need to move from thinking that artificial intelligence is siloed into these one things and think about LLMs bringing all of that together. So instead of having a one chat conversation with someone that's a one-dimensional thing, you could talk to them about anything, and that's what an LLM can do. So I think when we have these conversations, we'll probably refer to it as Chatgpt because that's what most people will know it as, but that's interchangeable for Claude, Gemini, Copilot. It might be bespoke systems that you use at work that you might know about that you didn't realize was an LLM. And they're constantly learning. They don't just learn from that data set and that's it. They continue to learn, which is where the intelligence comes in.
Absolutely. And so we've talked about using ChatGPT and using these LLMs. So let's talk a little bit about that, because that has a specific term that really helps to deal with engaging and interacting with these LLMs. Let's talk a little bit about that.
So that would be prompt engineering. It's probably a term that you've heard and thought, what is that? But basically, it's the input that you put into the LLM. So we're starting to get all of this terminology now that feels a little bit techy and a little bit confusing. But really what it is it's what you're putting into something like ChatGPT. So how you ask ChatGPT to do something for you and how you optimize that will massively dictate what you get out of it. So a lot of people are using ChatGPT and LLMs as super-powered search engines. And, that's cool. They can get really good results from that and it's great. But it's such a tiny amount of the power of what it can actually do. And a lot of people may have started to use ChatGPT and LLMs, using it like super-powered search, and then thought, oh, that's great, and moved on, and not really done anything beyond that and realised the power of it. So prompt engineering is being able to be specific to get the LLM to complete a task for you at the most optimised way possible. So it's about giving really clear, detailed instructions. Simple though, they don't have to be long, just thinking about what you put into it because it will really dictate what you get out of it. And what we're seeing is, sorry, I can see you were going to say something there. What we're seeing is people that are getting so good at the input that it's actually amazing what they're getting in terms of the output. And that's when you realise, hang on a minute, this isn't just a search engine. The potential here is like unlimited.
And I think that when you talk about this, I think, is that something that you need to be tech savvy to do? right? Because this is the thing. This is the difference, right? I think people don't really realize that you can just use, you don't have to have any coding knowledge or anything. These inputs that you're putting in is just words. It's just you communicating as if you were messaging someone or
Yeah,
messaging. You're just
if
writing
you
out an
can
instruction.
communicate clearly, you can prompt engineer. If you can give instructions to someone else clearly, then you can be an amazing prompt engineer, because it is about the clarity of what you're saying. So think about giving an instruction to your toddler where, it's overcomplicated for them and they're not being able to follow it, and breaking it down and thinking about the audience that you've got, which is your toddler. This is the same thing, except it's the opposite, because what you can get out of it is like high level stuff that's amazing, but you're knowing it at a low level. So it's about asking it, I want to understand quantum physics, but can you explain it to me as a beginner? I want to know how to make an amazing patisserie, but I've never done that before. Please explain it to me in a very simple beginner way. I mean, those are just two really off the cuff examples, but it's about understanding your ability and the LLM's ability, and then thinking clearly about how you input that. So no, you don't need tech skills. And really, it's a few core skills that you can learn that are like fundamentals of how you can actually drive the vehicle of that supercar.
And if people want to learn more about prompt engineering and specifically those inputs and what you can get out, you have a course that we talked about in the last episode that is City and Guilds Assured, that people can take and learn if you want to know more about prompt engineering.
You can use Chatgpt, LLMs to a really high degree just by kind of using it, experimenting, listening to the things that we're going to say in the podcast. But to take it to the next level and learn that in a really in-depth way and learn the core basics of it, then yes, we've got the first two UK assured, City and Guilds assured courses that go into that in huge detail and depth, and that's a certification at the end of it. But really, anyone can learn these skills, and anyone can take some of the prompts that we're going to be talking about and use them and have really great kind of results immediately.
And I think that the more people, we spoke about this again in the last episode, the more people use these LLMs and see the results that you get out, the more confidence that they have in these. Because I think there can be a lot of fear around the word artificial intelligence. And I think as people use these LLMs, they'll start to see that actually these can be really beneficial, and kind of try and shift that mindset, because our exposure in the media to artificial intelligence, it can make people quite fearful. There's films about artificial intelligence that have been like terrifying, of what they can do and stuff. So would you agree that that's a huge block for people to be looking into artificial intelligence, our sort of preconceived notions of it?
Yeah, I think there's two camps. As with any new technology, there will be people that will be really for it and there'll be people that are really anti it. And you see that play out with loads of things. So I always laugh about the example of photocopiers. So when photocopiers were introduced in the 70s, people thought that they had some sort of like weird satanical abilities, because there'd never been any other way to do that previously. And there was a lot of like, oh, it's terrible, it's going to ruin the publishing industry. And, there's something a little bit not right about being able to do that. And look at it now. I mean, we've moved on from photocopiers, but at the time there was resistance to that. But then there was also people that it changed industries and was massively time saving. So I think there's always going to be that resistance, which is why it's really important, as well as learning about how to use LLMs, is to learn the governance and the ethics side of it. So one of our courses is around that, which is, safety, ethics, privacy, transparency, all of those things that are really important in terms of how you're using those huge amounts of data, and what you're getting out, but what you're putting in as well, because, you know, there's privacy issues around that. But that's kind of like a topic for another day. But I can understand really wholeheartedly why people are concerned about this technology. That's why I created 2 courses. One that heavily focuses on the governance aspects of it and using it safely, and then the, you know, how to superpower it and get amazing things out of it, because they go hand in glove. So you need to be aware of the ethics of what you're using as you're using it. So those 2 things together, if it's done safely and ethically, great. But as with anything that comes along, it can be used for kind of bad purposes as much as it can be used for good purposes. But the resistance that we feel to things that then become everyday items is really funny. So I have got a little example, because I just think it's such a cute example. So I get this newsletter that is called Letters of Note, and it has famous letters in it throughout the years, and they're just always really interesting. But there was one that came through, and I just found it really relevant to this. So it's from just a dad writing to his daughter in 1930, and he is called Robert Lee, and he's writing to his daughter called Elle. And it's not very long, and it's typed, but there's just 2 sentences actually in it that I just think really kind of grabbed me. This is 1930. So at the end of this letter, he says, "You must not judge this letter by its length, but by the effort it is to write it. I never tried to use a typewriter until yesterday." So this was 1930.
Wow.
And he used a typewriter to write to his daughter Elle, and it really wasn't a great letter. But what he's saying in there, I think, really sums this up, that now look at how ubiquitous keyboards are and how much we use things like that. But can you imagine a time when that didn't even exist, or it was so brand new, like people having home computers for the first time? So I think we think about AI now, and Chatgpt may end up being something completely different that we can't even imagine. We may not even use keyboards to enter into it. You know, we don't know what we don't know at this point. But to think that we're witnessing that happening in our lifetime as it's unfolding, like, that just really blows my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's only when we look back we see just how far we've come, you know, and it's cyclical. You know, these technologies are coming along, and like you said, the photocopier as well, is there's cycles of these waves, and it feels like this is the hugest wave that we could be riding. But that's because it feels like it now. You know, in another 50 years, there may be something else that's just completely.
I know, and that totally blows my mind. Could we have said 5 years ago that there would be this thing that you could type stuff into, because that sounds like the internet, right? And it gives you a result. Imagine when the internet was first kind of used, how amazing that felt. But this is beyond that, because it's learning by what we're saying, and its knowledge is growing by everything that we ask it and every output that it gives us. So what could be next with quantum computing? I mean, that really is a bit of a mind bender.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been really interesting, really fascinating. I love talking about it, and I hope that people have enjoyed listening to this episode, because you know it's a topic that we're both really passionate about. So in our next episode, we're going to take a little break, and we're going to do a Q&A episode. Lots of you have already sent us in questions, which is absolutely fantastic. So we're going to take a little break and discuss those and answer those in our next episode.
So I think questions are a really great format for this, because we've kind of run through some of the basics, and they're questions that come up time and time again, like, you know, where does it come from? What does it mean? But then there are other questions that I can't even predict what they're going to be, but they then start a conversation that then makes it make sense for everybody else. And that's why I think that having a question and answers session is going to be really good for this, because it is a dry topic until you get into the actual nitty gritty of using it and the fun ways of using it. It can feel really dry. So yeah, when we are answering those questions, it's probably going to spark more questions because you're going to be listening to it and the potential is going to unfold and you're going to start to think, oh, if it can do that, can it do this? And what else can it do? So I'm hoping that by answering those questions, we're going to get loads more questions, which are just going to be really interesting for everyone.
Because we will do more episodes, more Q&A episodes. So if you do have questions or if you listen to that next episode and it prompts a question from you, please write to us, get in touch with us, and we can answer it on a future episode. Lovely. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for watching and for listening. That's it for this week. See you later.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Simplify AI podcast, making AI easy to understand, helping you save time and work smarter. To learn more about AI and take our online courses, visit learnai.training.